Hi. So today we're slowly adding more and more complexity to this new network. So now today what we'll be doing is adding a certificate server to this network. This will allow various different pieces of the network to be issued certificates that are trusted internally by everyone in the domain. And this will allow me to deploy certificates for websites, to the servers themselves, for applications that require them, for doing things like IPsec and other things that may require certificates or anything like that. Well, maybe not IPsec, but yeah, just certificates in general. So for purpose of this, again, we'll be deploying another new server. So let's go ahead and say install. You've seen this probably a lot of times by now, so I'll just next through this real quick and won't bore you with the details. The main pieces that you need to be aware of is that again, I'm installing this on a Windows Server 1709 release, so again there won't be a GUI on this installation, and I will be trying to manage this primarily remotely again. So Windows Server Data Center, I'll stay with that release for this install and go ahead and say next, and I'll set the license term and say next again. I'll do custom. I'll say next again. Um, and we're off to the races. So we'll let that go ahead and install. And once it comes back and boot in, we'll get started. All right, so that was installed successfully. It only took a few minutes. Didn't take very long at all. So we're gonna need to set a password again. All right, so password has been changed. That'll go ahead and set up some housekeeping things, and then we're ready to go. So for this server, only thing I want to do, I'm going to go run my sconfig again. And so this server is connected to what should be my DHCP network. So this system should already have an IP address that's compatible with the DC1 Lewis Tech Views.int network. All right, so I want to just give the computer a name. So I'm going to type 2. I'm going to name it CS1, certificate server 1. Keeping my names pretty simple. Then I'm getting prompted to reboot. I'm going to go ahead and allow that reboot to. Alright, so we're back from the reboot. I'm going to go ahead and do Control Alt Delete and go ahead and log back in again. That'll throw me back to the prompt. I'm going to run sconfig again. And now what I want to do, I want to join the domain. So I'll just do 1 here and join the domain. So I'm going to say D for domain. And name of the domain to join, LewisTechViews.int. Hit enter. Then I need to specify a user account that is authorized to join. So Lewis Tech Views, go ahead and use the administrator account. I need to provide a password. Okay, so I might have did something wrong here. So let me go ahead and check the IP. Oh, so okay, so I don't actually have an IP on here. So I maybe didn't connect it. I thought I did, but let's go and check that. I thought I added it to the network. Okay, yep, it looked like I did not. It's added to the wrong switch right now. So I just connected to a different network. So let's see what happens. There we go. So now I have IP address. Okay, so yeah, that was just IP address issue. So let's go try it again. Domain, LewisTechViews.int. Need to specify username, views administrator, need a password again. There we go, looking much better. So it's just asking me, do I want to reboot? And I'll go ahead and do that. And oh, well, I should have said no to that, but so I could have did both of these in the same step, instead of doing it in 2 separate steps. So computer name will still be CS1. Authorized domain user. Yeah, this is kind of weird. I didn't expect to get another prompt here, but let's go ahead and try that again. Yeah, I think I'm doing something weird there. Yeah, I probably didn't read that right. So I'm gonna go ahead and reboot this server. All right, that server has rebooted. So I'm gonna do hit Control Alt Delete again. So I'm going to do other users this time. All right, so this time I'm going to actually log into the domain. So let's do LewistTechViews/administrator. All right, so that just kind of verified that, hey, yeah, I'm successfully on the domain now with the CS1 server. So at this point, I can do sconfig again, take a look at things here. We're looking good. And so now this system is up and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and log off of this system. Go ahead, log off. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go hop back over to my management system and now start managing this system from there. All right, so now here we are. I'm back over on my management system now, and I connected back up to Project Honolulu. So now what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and add in another server. So I'm going to add in that CS1 server to be under management in Project Honolulu. So I can just go ahead and type cs1.lewistechviews.int. It'll go try to find that system. Was taking a little bit longer than I expected. Okay, yeah, normally it's a little bit faster than that, but that's fine. I did find it. Go ahead and say submit. All right, so now I can just go ahead and click on CS1. It'll go ahead and use those credentials I'm already logged in with, and now I'm connected to CS1 and managing it through Project Honolulu. And again, it's similar like with my domain controller, all I did was deploy the OS. I joined the system to the domain, and then I immediately added it to Project Honolulu. And now I can manage it. I can restart it, shut it down, turn on those disk metrics. If I still need to rename the system to something else, I can go edit computer ID. I can rename the system directly from here, join it to a different domain or a work group. Again, I could do things like turn on remote desktop if I need that. But again, since this is kind of a headless or GUI-less OS, I may occasionally need to RDP to it, in particular when I was using that sconfig command. I need to RDP to use that. But outside of that, the times when I actually need the RDP should be pretty limited, since I can do most things I need to do directly from here. So since this, as I mentioned, this was going to be a certificate server, so let's go ahead and install the certificate services roles on the system. Well, actually, one other thing we may want to do is actually maybe give this system a static IP address as well. Right now, as you recall, it received the DHCP address. So what I can do, there's a couple different things I could do. I could leave it with this DHCP assigned address, but I could make it a reserved address on the DHCP server. So every time this system boots up, as long as my DHCP server is available, it'll always assign it this 150.3 address. Or I can just go ahead and assign it manually on the box. So since I haven't shown this yet, I'll show you some of the possibilities of managing the network adapter through Project Honolulu. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So you see here we have the one network adapter on the system, and it has a 150.3 address. So if I go ahead and click on that adapter, then I get a whole slew of all different type of information about this network adapter. We can see that it is currently using DHCP. That's marked as yes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit settings. And then I'm going to actually change this from using DHCP, and I'm going to make it statically assigned. All right, so 150.3, my default gateway will be 150.254. So that's that router 1 system. That's not part of the domain that is serving as a router for us. And DNS 150.1, that's fine. And I'll go ahead and say save. So that'll go and update those settings on the system. So now effectively I have a static IP address. So let's go ahead and refresh this. Let's see if we lose connectivity or we're still good. It should have went out and tried to make those adjustments for us. Like it's taking a little bit longer to load now. Those settings may have. All right, so Look like that setting did take effect. Look like we did get a little error message. I think that was during the time when it was trying to adjust the settings. We kind of briefly lost connectivity, but we can see here now we're back. Same IP address. And see IPv4 says it's no now. So like we're in good shape. All right, so now we can continue. So now I want to do jump over to the roles and features options. And since, as I mentioned, this will be a certificate server, so I want to enable certificate authority. I guess I could do a lot of these other ones as well. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do those. Network device, I'm not really doing anything with network devices. Online responder. These things I'm checking, like this is no way best practices, which you probably don't necessarily want to actually do exactly this what I'm doing here, but for the purpose of my lab, it'll be sufficient. So in a real world environment, you may want to like spread the web enrollment out, online responder and things like that out into various different servers. But for the purpose of this, I won't do that. I'll just go ahead and say install. That'll go through and check for any dependencies that these other roles that I'm installing needs, and it'll try to install those. So we see here we got a lot of IIS requirements, so it'll go through and go ahead and install all those IIS pieces that I need as well. And I'll go ahead and authorize it to reboot the server automatically if it needs it, and I'll go ahead and say yes. So we'll go ahead and kick off that job on CS1, and then up here at the top, again, I can kind of track that as that goes on. And then once that's finished successfully, or if it fails, I should get a kind of a toast notification here notifying me of the status of that. So that's going to take a few minutes probably to install, but actually, I guess moving pretty quick already though. But I'm not really sure how close to accurate the status bar is on the true progress, but it's progressing along pretty quick it seems. But um, yeah, we'll let that go. All right, so that reported back is saying that was successfully installed. So what we can do now is now we can't directly manage the certificate authority through Project Honolulu, but as you can see, we was able to successfully install the role and see that it went through successfully. So now what we would need to do, we'll actually need to go over to another tool to Server Manager specifically to go and manage that server. So I'm over here in Server Manager. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go right click on all servers. I'm going to add servers. And the server I want to add is that CS1 server we just were managing. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the list and say OK. So this server will go ahead and try to connect to that server, enumerate any roles that's on the system, and then present those tools back to me. So we can see ADCS actually popped up. So that kind of is telling me that, hey, that certificate service role was successfully installed and it's waiting to be configured. So let's go ahead and do that now. Configure Active Directory certificate services. Let's go ahead and do that. It's asking me to install following roles. So I must belong to the local administrator group. I'm part of that, so we're checked. Good up there. Must belong to the enterprise admins group. I'm also a part of that group. So to small remotely, you must enter credentials. So since I am doing this remotely, I need to enter some credentials that is both a local administrator on the server, and then also part of the enterprise admin group for these other enterprise related services that I'll be deploying. All right, so I'll go ahead and say next, and then first I'm going to go ahead and configure the certificate authority. I don't know if I can do multiple of these together. Actually, let's keep it simple. Let's do one at a time. So certificate authority, go ahead and say next. For this will be an enterprise CA. Essentially, it'll be a CA that will always be online or should always be online. And I'll say next. This will be a root CA since this is my first CA within this particular new domain. I will create a new private key. I will, let's bump it up to shy 512, make it a little bit stronger. But you have a lot of options here. Not an encryption algorithm person, so That sounds good to me. Let's say next. I'll leave everything as default. I don't want to change any of those names. Validity period, 5 years. 5 years sounds good to me. This lab probably won't be around for quite 5 years. I have a tendency to kind of rebuild and redo things every so often. So 5 years is probably plenty for this. And then you can always renew that. Say if I do have this lab 5 years later, I could renew that or extend that. Go next, and then go ahead and say configure. So I'm going to go ahead and let that install. That'll take a few minutes, and then we'll, oh, actually didn't even take a few minutes. It took a few seconds, so it's done already. Go ahead and say close. So I have additional roles that I can configure. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. Configure some of the other roles. So again, have to do that same process. I need to provide the credentials. And say next. So this time, let's do web enrollment. Sounds good. Can I do both of those together? It may. Let's see. Oh, I'll just do them one by one. Configure. So like that, didn't have any options for redo, so that went by pretty quick. So let's say yes again, more credentials. Next, let's configure enrollment web service. And I'll leave that at default. Again, I'm not really a certificate person. I know enough to get it installed, get it working, but as far as best practices and things like that, that's kind of beyond my area of expertise. So I need a service account, or I can use a built-in application pool identity. So for the purpose of this, I probably want to use a service account. So I'm going to pause the video here for a second and go ahead and create a new service account, and then I'll be right back and we'll use that account. Okay, now I'm back. So what I did, I went ahead and created a new service account on the domain that I'll use for this service. But as you read this, you see it says the account selected must be a member of the IIS_iUsers group. And if privilege is selected as authentication type of service person name is required for the service account. What I need to do, the service account that I created, I need to go and add it to this group on the server. There's a couple ways I can do that. So one, I could try to connect to the system remotely through computer management, but quite often, a lot of time the ports and things are blocked. So let's try that. I don't think I open up any ports or anything. So if they're not open by default, this will fail, which I believe it probably will. Like we're not connecting. So what I can do, remember we have Project Honolulu, right? So let's go jump over to Project Honolulu, and on CS1, let's go to local users and groups. Let's go check out what that looks like. Yeah, as you can see, the computer management failed. So it's saying that, hey, I need to go and turn on these firewall rules in order for that to work. So here in local users and groups, as you can see, we can see the local users that are a member of the system. If we jump over to groups, we can see all of the locally defined groups here. And then as we can see, that group that it mentioned, IIS_iUsers, we see that group there. So I can go ahead and click on that. And then I can add users to that group. So if I click add user, and the username that I want is, let me go double check that name. So that name is CES-service1 is the username, and that username is part of the Lewis Tech Views domain. So type Lewis Tech Views /CES-service1, say OK. And now that user gets added to that local group. So now we can jump back over to Server Manager here and finish our setup here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit select and go ahead and provide some credentials so I can log into that. Oh, wait, yeah, actually, let me put the account that I actually want. That's what I want to put there, and I think I remember the password. Go ahead and say OK. There we go. So I went ahead and added that in now. So I added in the CS Service 1 to the group through Project Honolulu. And now we can continue with the setup. So let's go next. And I'll just go ahead and use that existing certificate that that was created in the earlier step. I'll say next, and then configure. All right, configuration succeeded. And then it's telling me a few more additional things that you may need to do in certain scenarios. But again, for this lab environment, I'm probably not setting this up as best practice. As I said, a lot of these roles will be on the same server. I'm not distributing it out or anything like that for the purpose of this. So let's go ahead and say close, and let's configure additional roles again. And let's go ahead and put in the credentials. All right, and let's configure the online responder. So that's the last one we need to do. Go ahead and configure, and configuration succeeded. All right, so now we should have a certificate server running on CS1 that's ready to go and connect to. So let's go ahead and try to connect to it with the certificate authority management tool. Hit certificate authority. Give that a few seconds. Look like it's trying to load up for the first time. Let's see if that's successful or if we get an error. It looks like, see, the main services are running down here. So there we go. So now we're connected up. Expand this out a little bit. So Lewis Tech View CS1 CA. You can see revoke certificates, issue certificates. So I haven't configured this to actually issue a certificate to anything, but it has its own primary certificate for the domain controller from the domain controller template for the domain controller. So it has its certificate. There's no pending requests, there's no failed requests, and there's a few default certificate templates built in. So, all right, so we have a certificate authority up and available for use for the domain. Hopefully this video has been useful for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.